Everybody, it's Scott Yours again, and this is another episode of the Wolf and the Neural Network. Today we're going to talk about Dr. Douglas Grant, the Registrar and CEO of the College of Physicians and Surgeons. We're going to talk about Crystal Morgan, the lead investigator in fraud at the college, and then Suzanne Husbands, another fraud at the college. So what we're going to do is talk about their replies in regards to Nancy Murphy and Kristen Holm, who literally mocked and humiliated, tortured me, and stripped my rights and dignity and didn't record anything about it. Right, so they replied, "Oh, I'm just a liar, I'm just retarded." And they can't explain why I'm just retarded or a liar. But inside of the reports, you can see they state, you allege. Well, all of my submissions were written submissions, right? So why would you state you allege and then not copy and paste what I'm alleging? Or at least reference the page you think that it's coming from. Or at least call me to try to clarify any of those points, right? Those are all reasonable professional steps to take, but they didn't take them because they wanted to create their own slanderous statements, right? That was obviously intentional. But then you see they're lying about my book bag that, it very clearly was taken there before I got there. They're lying about what Dr. Holmes said about my family physician, right? She switched the words a year and a half later, and instead of the college referencing the record, they used what she said a year and a half later. So, how can this be based on my submissions or the actual record when I clarified all this and even provided the page numbers, right? It's because it's all fraud. They just committed raw fraud, right? They wanted to claim plausible deniability. And then they'll say, "Oh, we didn't know. It's 180 records. It's too hard. Oh, life's so hard. It's too long and detailed. He did too good of a job, or it's too short," right? Just anything where they're the victims and I'm just a retard who deserved it. And they wanted to do this so that they could claim plausible deniability on the front end, right? Their main goal was going to use Section 46 to keep me quiet about this. So then if I released any information to try to protect myself, they would use Section 46 to retaliate and state I had a statutory requirement. And then they would try to say, well, then we're going to sue you. And if you don't just drop it, and that's what they would try to do, right? Because they knew the socioeconomic situation. So they knew they could create fraud on that record, but then they could use Section 46(2)(a) in the Medical Act to basically tell RCMP, look, we had somebody look at this, he's just retarded. And it's like, an RCMP is not going to say how or why because they're involved in this and that works to their favor. So instead they'll react, claim plausible deniability, and then they get another professional on the record just slandering and defaming me, because how can you have a conversation about this? That's right. I'm just a retard, which is exactly what happened with Nancy Murphy and why they didn't record anything in the first place, because I'm not even a human being, and that's the way they want to keep it, right? That's why nobody contacted me. They didn't want to show me that dignity, because if they treat me like a human being, they can't claim plausible deniability. Now, this goes back to when Nova Scotia Health Authority in August 2023 had me served by a bailiff. Now, what they did inside of that was stated that I was at these physical locations, which is an absolutely fraudulent statement, and that they had two security officers witness that they had read that document to me. Completely fraudulent statement. That is defamation, that's slander, and it's fraud. That was submitted to Nova Scotia Health Authority. I did make calls asking them about it, and it was submitted to the college, but you don't see that listed anywhere in their replies, right? And it happened 2 days after I submitted my complaint, or got the reply back from Nancy Murphy, showing it was retaliation. It was fraud and retaliation. But you see, the college would then try to use that as some reason to justify not contacting me. Even though they know everywhere in this record, the HRP record and RCMP record, it states how cool, calm, collected I was. Even given these people were terrorizing me, I was completely respectful. They know that, but they're trying to claim plausible deniability and use that kind of a document against me for them claiming plausible deniability. That's right, and to try to justify treating me less than human. Right? And this all ties back into January 29, 2023, the morning my mother died, right? And Tim Houston showed up at the hospital. It's a very similar play, right? They knew I was in a compromised state, and had I have yelled or raised my voice, or I would have said or did anything, it would have been my word against theirs. That's right. And who would you all have just believed? Tim Houston and whatever story they played on the news or the police said. And they would have said, if you shut up, nobody needs to know about this. And then the RCMP would just claim plausible deniability. How could we know? How could we know? Exactly like in all three of these situations. And you're like, okay, so let's take this to another level of consistency then, how they're trying to claim plausible deniability and how they're trying to use Nova Scotia Health Authority to retaliate and then use RCMP to retaliate. Well, they keep bouncing back their fraudulent record, okay? Because you can go to when you hear me speaking with RCMP, Jessica of RCMP Sheet Harbor on the phone. And I like really calm and everything, stating I want to move forward with charges and stuff. And when I state that, like, look, they said that they would just, if I mentioned J.D. Irving, they would just lock me up and have me pumped full of drugs. You hear somebody saying good in the background. Now, later on, you hear Jessica say, oh, I will contact you Monday. Now, within 2 hours of that phone call, I think it was for 2 hours, I received a call from Mental Health Services. That's right. So she didn't contact me on Monday either. See, what she did was call them because she knew about the bias on the record because I'd specifically told her. That's right. And she wanted them to retaliate so they could generate another fraudulent record so the police could try to justify what they did. Right? Because if not, then Jessica has to explain the stalking me up and down the road as I'm protesting racism, why I have a picture of the RCMP vest, have to explain why they didn't allow me to open a case. Right? And so I have to explain why she seems to have stalked me to the store. Right? And she knows that Daddy, Mike Doomey and Dennis Daly are in a lot of trouble. And they're not going to do anything about this because this is bad. Right? This implicates them in a real bad way. And it implicates the right kind of white. So she knows she can basically get away with anything. And then what are they all going to claim? Plausible deniability, plausible deniability. Dennis Daly didn't know. Mike Doomey didn't know. Everybody's just plausible deniability. You're just retarded. That's exactly their play. And it's not even that surprising, right? Because, like, what else do these people have? When you take away their guns, money, and blind authority, look at them. They can't even answer a basic question, yes, no question, right? And that brings us back again to the college, right? And what they did with Cox and Palmer, right? Now, Cox and Palmer employ Stephen McNeil, which is a named abuser, but also they have contracts with J.D. Irving and the Irving Shipbuilding, making them a massive conflict of interest. I, in fact, had called Cox and Palmer, and it said about, the issue with J.D. Irving, and they said they were a conflict of interest, right? Of course they are, right? But now the college has sent my personal and confidential information to the coworkers and bosses of my abuser who could face serious reputational damage because of this, right? And now they all have shared interests. Kristen Holm, Cox and Palmer, J.D. Irving, Stephen McNeil, in concealing this. Well, now they provided my records to them stating that I'm just retarded. You see the massive problem here, and the college knows that because Gus, the president and CEO, he studied law at McGill University. So he knows about conflict of interest. He knows that that record is fraudulent. He knows how that can be used to retaliate against me. And I want to really speak to the hypocrisy here because in the instance with Nancy Murphy, right, she admits that, hey, my record is incomplete. And then later on, he states, oh, we discussed with Nancy Murphy about the importance of keeping a good record, especially if IPTA might be contested, like lecturing her, as they now commit major fraud on these documents that they are submitting, knowing they are going to be contested. He didn't link anything. He didn't actually reference anything. He could have copy and pasted, right? So it's just raw, pure bigotry, prejudice, bias, and hypocrisy, right? It's not based on facts, evidence, due process. I'm not even a human being to these people, and that's the way they want it, so they can actually hide from themselves. It has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with them not being able to face the monster that's looking them back in the mirror, right? Because the facts are, I even built a whole custom fact-checking platform, that we can have a professional, responsible discussion about all of this stuff. I am one of the best in the world. I have 18 years in experience in technology. I am one of the best. Right? Those are facts, but, it doesn't come down to that. It just comes down to what these people not being able to face who and what they are when you take away their guns, money, and blind authority. Right? It's actually sad in a way to watch them be so pathetic about it. But there's nothing you can do. This is the state of Canada. This is the state of these kinds of people, right? And this is what systemic failure looks like. This is what systemic violence looks like. This is exactly what minorities have faced for decades, generations, right? And if they're going to do this to me, and I'm one of the best in the world, what have they done to these other groups of people? You already know what they have done. Lied, cheat, stole, and destroyed lives just so they can call themselves heroes and claim plausible deniability, right? It's written all over this. If I'm one of the best in the world and they do this to me, what would they do to your friends, family? You already know the answer, right? Anyways, everybody, listen, if you've listened to me, thank you for letting me talk. All right, have a good day.